Hey everyone, welcome back to the Sword and Soul podcast. I'm your host, Jacob, and today Matt and I are going to be talking about the mask of manhood. In today's episode, we're diving into quiet ways men often hide emotional pain behind performance, stoicism, strength, and silence. We're going to unpack why this happens, what it costs us, and how we begin to take that mask off in the presence of God, our loved ones, and others. If you're a man who's ever felt like you've had to hold it together while everything inside is unraveling, this one's for you. We're going to begin to talk about what the mask looks like. And the ones that many men wear without even knowing it. It shows up in phrases like, I'm good, I'll handle it, I can't afford to fall apart, and I just have to keep moving. These are common things that most of us tell each other and ourselves to tell ourselves to just to bypass all that pain, all that vulnerability that others might see in us if we pull that mask off. And we're often conditioned early to perform strength, to suppress emotion, and that those things equate to vulnerability, weakness. And just over the years, we learn to cope through silence, workaholism, addiction, and distraction. What do
Yeah,
you think about that, Matt?
that phrase "I'm good" it's very overly used amongst men.
Yeah.
Um, we internalize everything. We analyze how we're going to break it down ourselves and how we're going to handle it. And then, as you followed up with that, is I'll handle it. So typically, if our wife or somebody's addressing us, we say I'm good and I'll handle it, and we move forward. It really seems like we as men are constantly in an internal battle with what we should and shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, it's one of the things I see a lot is men who have adopted this mask and they don't even know they do it. It's just a part of their life. Especially guys our age who our parents weren't raised on expressing emotion very much, dealing with it and talking with it in the family setting. And I see a lot of individuals who just experience a lot of emotional neglect. So anytime they were sad, mad, those all those really hot emotions weren't looked at and dealt with very properly within the family system. It was because I said so, suck it up, go in your room and cool off. It was always very dismissive.
I would even expand on that to, for at least for our generation, our upbringing in school.
Mhm.
Teachers were very much the disciplinary figure. The principal was as well. If you acted out of line, the teacher addressed it, and there was no questions asked.
Mhm.
Um, I can recall many times hearing, not even to myself, but in class, sit down and shut up,
Mhm.
and followed with, it's because I told you so, and because I said so.
Yeah.
So our generation was definitely, I hate to use the word groomed, but even conditioned
Yeah.
early in our days to respect the authoritarian figures of our life and suck it up and do as you're told.
Yeah. We experience a lot of this emotional suppression through punishment, like you said. Sit down, shut up, go to your room. There was never any like processing of the emotions, discussing it. Why are you feeling this way? What can we do to help? That really wasn't, at least in my experience, part of the equation.
It seemed like growing up, there was always a consequence to your actions.
Yeah.
And the people around you knew what your consequences were. Like they made it very clear. We came from a generation where teachers still paddled students or hit them with yardsticks and set you in a corner, set you in the hall, told you to shut up. And having a kid that's in high school, like she's never had to experience that type of
Yeah.
teaching. And you look at the way the youth is moving nowadays, and it's because there's a lack of discipline in every aspect. And I'm not saying it's the teacher's place to raise or discipline somebody's kids, but it starts in the home.
Yeah. And it's just like from our generation to like your daughter's generation, there's been this what feels like to me personally is a giant overcorrection. Um, because as we're becoming adults and parents, we don't want our kids to experience what we did, which is great. It's the right mindset. It's the right way to go about things. But some people are not addressing it because they don't want to be punitive, because they don't want to deal with it. So you're overcorrecting, but you're still getting the same type of results, and tapping and adding onto that, you're adding poor discipline, like you talked about.
Yeah, it's a complete swing of the pendulum.
Yeah.
Parents don't want to parent. They want to be their kid's friend. They want to seem cool. And it really comes down to a lot of people our age, the upper 30s, early 40s, have a hard time refusing. We're getting older.
Mm-hmm.
And you still feel like you're 20 years old inside. You still can remember your teenage years because they were our glory years growing up. And you're trying to be friends with your kids. And that's where the lack of respect for a lot of parents comes, is because their kids have never had their parents discipline them.
Yeah. So you go from a generation of authoritative parents like we had mostly, and now we don't want our kids to experience that, so we go the opposite direction. And it's like you said, want to be friends, let them get away with anything, validate all of their feelings, don't hold them, which is good, but you're not holding them to any sort of like responsibilities, any sort of personal responsibility.
You're not teaching your kids to be accountable for their own actions.
Exactly.
And I can only speak from my upbringing, not really yours, but I came from a family where if you addressed anybody from another family or anybody in the community, it was Mr., Mrs., yes, ma'am, no, ma'am.
Yep.
And that is foreign language with these kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've talked about on a previous podcast, a lot of the youth can't even maintain eye contact in a conversation.
Yeah.
Karen and I was talking the other day about this trend that our generation is talking about with the Gen Z stare, where you're having a conversation with somebody from Gen Z and they just stare at you because they don't know how to respond.
I've seen the memes on it, and I mean, I don't have a lot of interaction with that age range, so I don't have any experience with it. But
Go out
I
to eat. Like if you go to a restaurant, there's no, hey, how can I help you? And I've really
oh
witnessed it
yeah, yeah,
at like Walmart. The other day I went to Walmart and it's always busy. That's what Walmart is. And I'm checking out and the girl has a button on her shirt that says socially awkward. And I was very outspoken. I said, you having a button on your shirt doesn't take away the responsibility to say hello to somebody.
yeah. We're all socially awkward, bud. I
Yeah.
mean,
You're at work. You're not going to grow as a person by putting a button on your shirt and refusing to have communication with other people.
exactly. And I guess like going like thinking about it when you said that asking somebody a question. I guess I've noticed that too when I ask somebody for help or a question like where something's located or how to solve a problem or like what to do about a return, whatever it may be. And there's that lag. There's
They turn into a character, they lag out, and then they
yeah,
eventually
it's
get
like
back
it
to
takes
you.
them 2 to 3 seconds to process what you said, and then they stumble because they don't know how to critically think.
Yeah.
And it's like I chalk it up to just being young and inexperienced, and maybe it's a new job, but maybe it's something more.
Like, not to throw my daughter under the bus, we were talking the other day, and she's like, was Indiana a state in 1930? And my
Okay.
kid is an honor roll student. She's an athlete. And I just look at her. I said, you're getting ready to be 17, and you do not realize that Indiana was a state 100 years ago. That's not lack of my parenting. That's lack of you paying attention in school, because I know they've told you that. Because
And
I
it's
remember growing up, you had U.S. history, then you had state history, then world history.
See, to me, that sounds like a question our generation would ask because we don't have access to infinite knowledge by Googling or chat GPTing something. Like
Well,
she
we
didn't have to
come
ask that
from
question.
the generations of teachers telling us that you'll never have a calculator on you when you need it.
That's so funny. I was talking to somebody about that today, and we just like had a huge laugh about it.
We have,
Yeah.
like you said, endless knowledge in our hands at all times.
And it's like if they would have known at the time what they were saying about the calculator, let alone the fact that we basically have, remember we go to the library and you have the Encyclopedia Britannica. We have that times a billion
Yeah.
now in our pocket.
Yeah. And we made the joke the other day because my nephew's a big gamer. And I said, how would he respond if his mom's like, hey, get off the game real quick. I need to make a phone call.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's he just couldn't process that you could not get a phone call while you were playing video games.
I think we should just implement that anyways, even though it's not a real thing anymore.
Yeah.
That'll teach them, build some
Absolutely.
character. So
Anyways, back to the topic.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about what the mask looks like in men. And when it comes like from a mental health view, this is just classical emotional suppression. As men, we like to avoid emotions, especially the ones that are more deemed more feminine in nature, like the sadness, grief, fear, shame, all those things that society, culture um, has taught us to not discuss. And so men often end up living from the neck up. And basically, all that means is we just intellectualize everything. Everything is done mentally. We don't pay attention to how our bodies react to emotions. And we just live a life detached from ourself and from others. And when you get into this realm of emotional suppression, there's a lot of real consequences. And some of those are increased rates of depression. And this can often be shown as irritability. That's a big one for me. As soon as I start to feel my irritability going up, somebody does something that should not irritate me. I start to feel that coming up. I know I need to address something. Um, like you've had experience with substance abuse in your family.
Yeah.
We've talked about that a lot.
Thanks for clarifying in my family.
Yeah. So this is going to be an intervention. I'm going to talk about all of your addictions. No.
Start with this one right here.
There you go. And also, suppressing that, and that emotional suppression, excuse me, can lead to relationship breakdown because you're not opening up to your significant others, your friends, and you're not letting them in. You're not being open and honest. You're not making that connection. And most people, without that connection, they don't want to be around you because we're humans. We're programmed to be around other people and to crave that human connection. As much as we like to feel like we can be alone, it's really not how we're hardwired. And this emotional suppression also leads to chronic stress, which then can turn into somatic symptoms, headaches, gut issues, pain issues, and it's also ends up being a spiritual problem, which you can certainly talk about.
Yeah, first, I want to circle back where you talked about the somatic symptoms with like the gut issues. Most people don't know that roughly 3/4 of your immune system lays in your gut. So once your gut starts to get out of whack and your bacteria builds up from stress or whatever, you start to get sick. And that really shows how you can stress yourself so much where you're physically sick.
Mm-hmm.
And usually, too, when you're stressed, you're not eating the best, you're not exercising, you're being very dormant. And that helps with the weight gain and
Mm-hmm.
more health issues with that. So it really just shows how the mind and body really are connected. And once the stress really starts to kick in, your body shows it real fast.
Yeah, one of the hardest things I have like the one of the things I have the most trouble implementing in practice is like somatic exercises with men because it's just so much resistance.
Yeah.
And I get it because you have to switch from that shoulders up lifestyle to actually addressing where that anxiety sits in your body, where that depression sits. Like for me, it sits in the jaw, it sits in the chest and gut area. Um, Sometimes it's in the shoulders, and it's like when I start doing like somatic exercises and paying attention to that stuff and relaxing those areas, it releases that stress and that tension. and it just helps you calm down a little bit.
Yeah, it really lets you center on yourself and realize that you know you're under stress. You start your breathing exercises, start rolling your shoulders to try to take some of the tension out. And it's just that having the mindset to know that you're dealing with something and taking the first step, as I would
Yeah,
call it.
yeah, because you get in this feedback loop of I'm fine, it's all good, but you have to disrupt that if you want to get below the shoulders and you want to get into the body and see what you're feeling and experiencing. And it's that disrupting that cycle that is super hard.
Yeah. And two, like you said, it's a spiritual and biological problem. Men really do pay for stress in their bodies. How many times have you seen a guy that you just know he's going through it?
Yeah.
And typically, men respond to other men like, "Hey, man, you look rough. You
Mhm.
look like crap." And he knows he's going through it,
Yeah.
and he's wearing it on his face. His hair's not combed. He said his gut is bloated because he's not eating, he's not drinking water, and he's just storing all that stress in his body.
Yeah. Reduction in eye contact.
And then also, I mean, we always neglect the quality of sleep that you get when you're depressed. You're
Mhm.
constantly tossing and turning because your body knows that you're stressed out. It can't get comfortable because your mind's telling it, "Hey, man, we're in fight or flight right now."
Mhm.
Especially when it comes to depression or it comes to anxiety and wearing that mask of anxiety, like the one thing that your body wants is to rest and recover, and anxiety will not let it.
Mhm.
You lay down and get comfortable, you turn off the lights, you turn off the TV, and your mind just goes.
So racing thoughts, ruminations. Yeah. It's important to really invest time into your sleep hygiene.
Yeah, I I really try to get to bed at a certain time every night. Most of the days I wake up at the exact same time every day, but if you usually go like 3 or 4 days off of your sleep schedule, you
Mhm.
start to show it.
Yeah. Mine's very strict. Mine's we get up and we start getting ready for bed 8 p.m. Usually in bed by 8:30. I've got my audiobook in my ear that helps, you know, with the ruminations or stresses and lets me calm down. And then my wife is reading next to me and, she's rubbing my back. And then I'm out, I'm gone. And then I'm up at 5 o'clock.
I
Uh,
laughed because I think 2 nights ago you sent me a picture of a bracelet you ordered, and by
yeah.
the time I replied, you were already asleep.
Yeah.
And
I'm, I'm gone.
I was like, all right,
Yeah.
he sent me a picture. I asked a question. He's asleep.
Yeah. Sometimes, like, if it's like 7:45, 8 o'clock, and you text me, it's like, do I even want to respond? Because I'm going to send it and he's going to respond and I'm done.
Yeah, because you're like at 8:30 to about like you said 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
I'm at 10:30 to 6.
Yeah.
So,
It's
and
like,
I'm just aware, like if I get a text from you after 8 o'clock and I respond, I know I'm not going to hear back till 5 a.m.
yep. Yeah. It's gone. You're done. And it's just like, and that's what I found out works for me. And it's
Yeah,
like I'm not gonna fight it because I don't know, 20 and when I was in my 20s, early 30s, I would always force myself to go back to sleep for that extra hour. And it's when I started listening to my body, and it's like, if you're up, you're up. Just get up, go get your coffee, go sit down, do your Bible study, put your TV show on, and just be up. Because when I would fight it and then get up, I was way off kilter for the whole day.
yeah, and that's one of those things too where you were in tune with what your body responded to and how it made you feel, and you analyzed it and realized this is what works for me.
Yeah. And it's that discipline in listening to your body rather than your mind and what, oh, that extra hour of sleep is really going to help.
Yeah,
When really it doesn't. It makes me have a worse day.
no,
So we got to find what works for you and stick to it. The next section we're going to talk about is kind of where the mask comes from. And we touched on this a little bit. The family upbringing. Matt and I touched about our family upbringings, big boys don't cry, or in other situations where you don't have a safe environment to be open and honest about your emotions. Um, a lot of abusive homes, you are punished for your emotions, whether it's verbal, physical. So you learn that it's not a safe place, and you take that into adulthood. also the cultural messaging that we talked about manhood, dominance, control, the idea of men should never need help, which is nice to see that things are switching slowly, probably too slowly for men. Um, I do see more men willing to seek treatment, and it's definitely, in my experiences, mainly in like the 30, like the 25 to like 35 range are usually the most open. They're the most excited to work. I had very little trouble getting them invested in themselves and the process, which is very promising to see.
And it kind of reminds you, like, growing up when we were in our late 20s to early 30s. That's where you really start to realize, like, all right, I'm a man. The way I'm moving right now is going to set up my future. And to have a client of yours like say, hey, I need help with this, I'm struggling, or I don't have this figured out, like, kudos to them, man, because we come from the generations like,
Yeah,
well, we're gonna forge through.
yeah. It's like I get proud of them, and it's not even anything I did. It's just because they're open and willing to do the work and to, you know, take a look inside.
Yeah, and within the church culture, it's often talked about how spiritually tough men are in the Bible. But in reality, like, a lot of the men that were, especially like the disciples, like, they were very loving and caring people.
Mm.
And I always tell people, because that "What Would Jesus Do" bracelet's very popular. It's coming back again. Like, Jesus embodied love, man. He wasn't your toxic man. He wasn't your alpha male. He was
Uh-huh.
very calm and centered, in touch with how he was feeling. He could read a room, and a lot of men need to be able to get back to that.
Yeah, and it's this idea is that as a man, you can be dangerous and you can be an emotional and touching person. And there are times for all of those things when you need to protect your family, when you need to be there for them. And that's really what like being a man and masculinity is. Like you said, the Bible has it rooted all throughout it, how men behave, both spiritually, physically, emotionally. And like you said, we need to get back that emotional part in this idea and just throw away the idea that I can't be a man and tough if I'm also emotional and vulnerable, which is nonsense.
Yeah, like right now in our men's group, we're reading a book called DNA of Man by Matt Hollick, and it's talking about how when men typically join the church, they lose their identity. They feel like they have to
Mm.
be soft and approachable at church, and they can't be a man. But in the Bible, it calls for men to be strong and to bear the load. And we always, in our group, we talk about how if something was to pop off at church, it's expected of us in the men's group to be the ones to handle the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And we're also typically the point of contact when somebody's going through a grieving process or a struggle, because we've bonded together as a group of men and we've talked about how we approach certain topics within the church, how we're going to handle it. And I'll get out, it's just being a man. You got to know how to handle the tough and also approach the soft.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, it's like like you talked about being strong in the tough aspect is easy. When it comes to the emotional side, that's where I have to put the most work into it. And that's the hardest part. It's the most painful, but it's the most difficult to look at. And it's being a man, it's that's my responsibility is to not let that piece become hardened and disappear.
Yeah, and it calls in Ephesians 5 that men are to be the most crucified person in their home. Every decision I make for our family is on my shoulders. It doesn't fall back on my wife. It doesn't fall on my kid. Like, I'm the leader of this family. And sometimes you have to step back and really process how we're going to handle situations, how we're going to move forward, what we're going to do in each scenario. And the same thing goes for the church. Um, I wrote down for the notes for this episode Psalm 51:17. The sacrifices guard the sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart. Oh God, you will not despise. And reading that, it's like God knows who we are. He's not impressed by the mask that we're wearing. He's not punishing us for the mask of anxiety or depression. He knows who we really are.
Yeah.
He knows we're going through a season. And that came from David. He's one of the most broken men in the Bible and also one of the most celebrated. And he was a warrior, a king, and he spent the Psalms just crying and weeping and begging for help.
Mm-hmm.
And the man went through it through all of the Psalms. I mean, he slayed Goliath, and then in Psalms he's asking for the Lord just to pay him favor because he doesn't feel worthy and he needs help.
Yeah, it's that asking for help. And one of my big things that I probably harp on too much with my clients is this idea that you don't have to do 70, 80, 90% of you don't have to take on 70, 80, 90% of the family responsibilities all the time. You and your wife, girlfriend, partner, it's a partnership, it's a friendship. So if there's a day where they're going through it and they can only give 20 or 30%, then you step up and you give the rest of it. And on a day you're having trouble, this is what I focus on is that you need to tell them that. You need to ask for help. You need to be vulnerable with them and say, babe, I got 30% today. I need you to help me out and get that other 70. Or whatever verbiage works for you in your relationship. But it's this idea of like your partner is there to alleviate the stress, the burden, and because you can't take it all the time.
Now, I feel like like you said, I'm the most crucified man in my home. And yesterday, like I reached out to you just very briefly, and I told my wife, I said, hey, like getting this title to this car switched off of mom's name to mine, like that was the last identifying piece that I had that connected my mom to this earth. And I don't know why it ripped everything out of me just going through that.
Yeah.
And then I text Kara and I got home because and right now we're volunteering for VBS cleanup for Bible school. And I came home and I just hugged her. And she's like, do you need to talk? I said, I've already told you everything. Today's not the day where I can process my emotions. And she just looked at me and she goes, I love you. I'm here for you. Tomorrow's going to be a better day. And it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why the whole process of yesterday just stuck a dagger in me the way it did. But my wife was able to read me enough to know that he's not going to be able to carry it on his shoulders today.
Yeah.
And she
Yeah.
picked me up and carried me.
Yeah. She knows today's not the day to hound you about something that she's been hounding you for a week on. She'll give you an extra day.
Yeah, so I'll probably get a text message in a couple hours. Why didn't you do this? But no,
Yeah,
I'm
that's
kidding.
fine.
But
So,
it's just, yeah, having that conversation with the people around you, letting you know, like, hey, today I can't carry this weight.
mm-hmm.
Give me some time and we'll circle back on this.
So the next section we're basically just going to talk about like what happens when we keep the mask on, and we touched on a few of these, but relationally, we struggle with that deep connection with partners, kids, our brothers in Christ. Spiritually, we show up to God with a version of ourselves. We polish it, we filter it, we are essentially fake. We're not living. I mean, he sees, like you said, he sees you. So there's no reason to put on that fakeness, that mask. Mentally, we might be functioning, but if all you're living is from the neck up, you're not flourishing. You're emotionally numb. You get angry. Um, you're secretly anxious or exhausted, and the amount of effort it takes to hide that from loved ones is exhausting, and you're going to burn out. And whatever that looks like for you, whether it's an anger outburst, it's violence in some nature, it's substance abuse, it's self harm. It it can come out of nowhere.
Very spur of the moment, like, too.
Yeah, it can be very dangerous.
You can lash out at the most inopportune time for something that isn't even really that deep.
Yeah, it's like I tell people, whatever you say, it comes out your lips. You can't take it back. It's out
Yeah.
there. So
Especially
taking,
with your spouse, your partner.
yes, if you need to teach yourself to take a break
Yeah.
and to say, hey, I need to tap out for 10, 15 minutes and I'll be back. That 10 or 15 minutes is nothing compared to the days, weeks, or months that you're going to have to live with whatever you said to your partner or your loved one or your kid that now you have to make up for.
Yeah, and that really goes back to we've discussed on many episodes for many different topics is just being intentional, taking the second
Yeah.
to breathe, collect your thoughts, and not just popping off at the mouth because your wife said something that upset you or your boss said something that upset you, and then you say the first thing that comes to mind, and now you have to live with it for days, weeks, years. Could
Yeah.
cost you your job, could cost you your family.
Yeah. We get this deeper problem when you have this mask on and you wear it long enough, you forget who you really are underneath it. And I can speak with to that and with personal experience. I mean, this last job I had was 14 years of just being miserable. I I didn't lose faith, but I distanced myself from it because I was depressed because I felt like what's the point if I'm going to be like this, you know? So my relationship with God took the back seat. I was irritable. I felt like I was on this island of like just myself. I pushed people away when they asked what's wrong. And I'm on the other side of that now. And I'm trying to learn and get back to who I was spiritually, relationally. And it's hard. And it's a lot of shame and guilt tied to that because that was my responsibility. That's on me. I could have left that job, you know, months or years ago. And my wife gave me the out. But as a man, I couldn't not be bringing in money.
Yeah.
And that was ego, that was pride. And just living in that for so long had so many negative impacts in my life that now I have to make up for it.
Yeah, and I've been in that situation where when Karen and I were just recently married, I was working at Vitamin Shop and COVID happened and they closed our store down for good. And I was like, I have to go home and tell my wife that I won't have a job in 8 weeks.
Yeah.
And I have to stay to the very last day if I want my severance check and if I want
Yep.
to be able to even move forward in general, because it was during COVID. Like, what is the workforce going to look like in June of 2020?
Yeah.
And at that time, she was laid off for 8 weeks because she was a hairdresser and salons were closed down. I was like, we're going to get through this.
Hmm.
And we got through it. I got to another job. And then I left that job for a very high paying job that I was at for 7 weeks, got fired. And I had to have that conversation like, hey, we're going to come out of this.
Yeah.
And came out much better than I went into this situation. So it was a huge blessing. But just knowing that specifically you and I have wives that are ready to take on the burden, as I would call it, of just the
Yeah.
uncertainty.
And that is so hard for me to allow to happen
Mm-hmm.
as a person, as a man. It's like I had to live my life, from childhood into adulthood as my only support, as my only voice of reason, and accepting help or allowing anybody in could have jeopardized all of the work I had done on my own to get out of the environment I was in.
Yep.
So it's like it's just not natural for me to have that available,
Let alone
like
from a like,
support
and this is a
support.
very misogynist thing to say, but let alone from a woman,
Yeah.
because we like once again we come from the generation that it's being a man. A man's got to handle it, and for our wives to truly just step up and just take the punches, and they no issues with it. They just move forward.
Yeah, it's like I see how she reacts to stuff and I'm like, Can I have that?
And see, that's how Kara says to me all the time. She's like, I wish I could just go through life not letting things affect me like they do you. And it's a very hard thing for me to say to her. I'm like, you haven't went through the things I went through in life.
Scoot up a little bit for the mic.
I said, you haven't went through the things that I have in life. Like,
Yeah.
I buried my dad at 25. I buried my favorite aunt at 19. I buried my grandma at 18. Like, thankfully, you haven't went through those things where you have to handle it.
Mm-hmm.
So the minuscule things of life, they just don't matter. Anyways, to touch on that, where you were talking about how carrying the mask affects us, I went back to Genesis, and the first thing that Adam and Eve did was they hid from each other. They hid from God. They withdrew. And it's funny to think back. You were the only two humans in the garden, and you think you're going to hide from the Creator. He knew what you were doing, and you still thought you could get away with it. So, like we talked about earlier, like God, He knows when we're being fake. He knows when we're putting on a smile when we want to be upset. He knows when we're sad when we should be happy, when we're dealing with it. And typically the people around us know what we're going through as well.
Yeah. Yep. And when it comes to taking the mask off, it's like we almost don't even know where to begin. And you got to start by just naming your truth. You don't heal what you won't name. So start journaling, start praying honestly and openly. I mean, that's a good start for practice with opening up before you even get to the point where you tell your spouse or you get a therapist or pastor or buddy. Start with prayer. It's excellent practice. And then that kind of transitions into practicing like honest confession with someone safe. So I was talking about start with God. It's an easy practice. And then see who your next person is in your circle. Who's the one you can tell something to that's not going to judge you? And start with them. Be honest with them. If you don't have somebody, then find a therapist, find a pastor, whatever you're comfortable with. And it's just talking and opening up about what you're struggling with is very cathartic, and it's like the biggest step. It's the hardest step. It's just that admitting and naming what you're going through and learning to sit with uncomfortable emotions. This idea of edge surfing, where when this sadness, grief, and fear start to present themselves, they're not enemies of your masculinity. They're not enemies of the self. It's part of all humanity. Everybody deals with it. And learning to sit with the uncomfortable feelings, you're going to learn that you can manage them, you can handle them. They don't control you. You're the one that has power over them. And that'll turn into maturity and just give you that confidence to not suppress the emotions you have, but to welcome them, to process them, and to deal with them. And changing how we define strength is going to kind of wrap all of this up, because real strength is the courage to be seen. Real strength is vulnerability under control. And it's like we talked about, is you can be a dangerous man and you can be an emotional man. They're not mutually exclusive. And when you're more in touch with your emotional side, you're going to strengthen yourself in times where you need to be dangerous. You'll have more control over yourself.
And I really wanted to touch on the practice honest confession with someone. Staying in isolation holds that mask into place.
Absolutely.
Not sharing it with anybody lets you continue to hide in the corners, keep wearing that mask, and just not move forward. James 5:16, confess your sins to one another and pray for one another, that way you may be healed. And the powerful word in that is healed. It's able to be moved forward. You're not just going to stay in place and have it in the shadows. You're able to move forward from it.
Yeah. For me, when I hear that one, it reminds me of, it was a meme or a video I saw or something. I think it was a pastor, and he was talking about individual is coming to church every day and everybody's all happy and life is great. What's going on in your life? Things are good. And he's like, no, I want you to come in here and I want you to say, I struggled with pornography this week. I
Yeah.
struggled with aggression this week. I struggled with hate this week. Be real. And this is exactly what we're talking about, is going in with that mask. It's going to, nobody's perfect all the time. If you can have an environment where you can walk in and be like, hey, I totally struggled with lust this week. I struggled with wanting revenge on somebody that harmed me. I got upset in traffic. Just, it's who we are. Name it.
Yeah. And really, when you confess it, it's not about owning the guilt behind it. It's exposing everything you're hiding so God can start the healing process with you. You speak it into existence. You're using your breath to breathe it out of you and let God enter and really start to remove those demons from you. And a lot of it, once again, is being intentional with it. If you are begging God to remove lust from your heart, get off social media, get
Mhm.
off the internet, take away the things where your lust really starts to kick in and give God a chance to be more of a priority over the social media that just lets the demons in.
Yeah. And then also comparing yourselves to others, not being thankful for the things you have because you are seeing people with things that you want. And it's that comparison that can just breed insecurity, breed negative thoughts. Like you said, if you're seeing that and that's coming from social media, cut it out. Because when we start to confess things and bring things to light and name them, it's the start of accountability.
Yeah.
And then that next step, whether it's prayer, a friend, pastor, therapist, then you've now brought them in and you've got now another level of accountability. And it helps to keep you honest when you know that there's people out there that know what you're struggling with and that can motivate you to work harder. And especially as men, we have this idea of perfection. And if you can't do it 100%, why do it at all? And it's that negativistic thinking that a lot of men end up failing on these small tasks that they're trying to get better at emotionally. It's like, well, I failed this week in this, so why even bother? I'm just going to fail again. And it's retraining your brain to go, it's progress over perfection. And you've heard that cliche saying, on t-shirts and you know, but it's really true that a little bit better every day, 1% better every day, and you take 2 steps back, make sure you take 3 forward. And before you know it, when you step back and zoom out, you'll see just how far you've come.
Yeah. And God, once again, never called for us to be perfect. He called for us to live better lives every single day, to love one another, and to carry each other's burdens.
Yeah.
One thing I thought about when I was going over this episode with you was that the Lord is close to the brokenhearted. He saves those who are crushed in spirit, and many testimonies for people when they come to their Savior is when they're at their bottom, and they actually are asking somebody to take charge and take control of them.
Yeah. It's important to not jump into the fix it mode. Sit with what's real, let the emotions move through your body, identify them, name them, and just begin there. Is that, I think we've touched on everything, or is there anything you want
Yeah,
to
just want to
hit
wrap it
on?
up.
Yeah.
Um, just want to remind everybody that your emotions are not your enemy. Emotions are natural to every human being. You're allowed to be sad. You're allowed to be upset. You're allowed to be happy. And that's
Yep.
one thing I think people are afraid of, is that if I'm happy, A, I should be doing more. Why am I so happy? Or B, if I'm this happy right now, what's going to go wrong?
Yep.
I'm not allowed to be happy. I'm not allowed to enjoy life because so many other people are struggling. And that's not fair. You're allowed to enjoy your time here.
Yeah. And when you take off that mask, you're not going to always feel safe, but that's really where the healing starts. So
Yeah.
it's going to be uncomfortable.
So once again, start with praying. Have that one-on-one conversation with God. Breathe out the things that you're facing with, and let Him take control. Just surrender it all to Him, and really just let Him work a miracle in your life.
Exactly. And if you're struggling, you don't know who to reach out to, we've got plenty of resources in the show notes. So stay happy and stay healthy, guys.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. This is Sword and Soul Podcast. You can find us on Spotify, YouTube, Twitch, TikTok, and Instagram.
Hey everyone, my name is Jacob. I'm a licensed therapist and co-host of the Sword and Soul podcast, where we explore mental health through a faith-based lens. This podcast offers spiritual encouragement and mental health education for informational purposes only. It's not a substitute for therapy or medical advice, and listening does not create a therapist-client relationship. If you are in crisis, please call 911 or present to your local emergency room. The full disclaimer and a list of mental health resources are available in the show notes. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show.